British families have seen the largest drop in wealth across the entire rich world since the pandemic, and that's according to the Union Bank of Switzerland. The wealth of average Brits has fallen by over 20% over the last 5 years and is the worst among the 37 countries surveyed. Well, here to talk with me now is the political commentator and the statistician, great friend of the show, Jamie Jenkins. Jamie, always a pleasure and never a chore. Here we go again. Things are getting worse for the Brits. What's going on?
Yeah, good afternoon, Martin. So it's quite damning, this one, isn't it? And we've seen one of the sharpest falls, as you pointed out there, in wealth in the developed world. And when we talk about wealth, what we're talking about pretty much here is what housing people have got, what savings, inventions, investments, pension pots and things. So that's what we're defining as wealth. It's not just income. And one of the reasons for this decline that we've seen over the last 5 years is partly to do with the huge inflation that we've seen and our kind of energy policy and the shocks that we have with our energy policy compared to many other countries, for example, like the US, that inflation has eroded the value of a lot of the wealth in the UK. Because if you look at what wealth we had in 2020 and compare that to 2025, the amount of the wealth could purchase, if you've got that wealth, it's a lot less. So it's quite damning. And I think, for me, when you look at the highlight of that, why are we such an exposing part of this? We've got one of the highest household debt burdens across the developed world as well. I think it's 20% debt burden compared to gross wealth, which is much higher than the likes of Germany, France and Italy.
And I wonder, actually, the report mentions that we have the highest energy prices in all of these countries, which, of course, has a huge draining effect on family wealth, but also it could get worse. We're hearing at the moment there could be capital gains tax increases to align it with your tax rates. And not only is that bad for people who choose to remain here, but Jamie Jenkins, the richest, might just clear off and leave.
And that is the part of the problem, because when you take an average wealth, if people do leave the country, that obviously leaves the wealth that you've got within the nation. And we've seen, haven't we, the figures that we've had in recent years, about 9,500 millionaires left in 2024. Projected, I think the forecast was around 16,500 last year. And as millionaires leave, the Labour Party's ideology as well, you know, we keep taxing and taxing and taxing. If they leave, getting zero of money is nothing, is it, when you compare to, say, getting a percentage of the money that they've got in this country? And what will we get under Andy Burnham, I suppose, is the question. Will wealth tax be coming? There's always been talk from the Green Party, and he's probably going to move Labour more to the left. Wealth taxes has always been talked a little bit about. That will encourage more people to leave. But remember, Martin, with a wealth tax, a lot of the wealth that people have, especially in Britain, because we've got a higher percentage of our wealth tied up in assets like houses. So when you have wealth taxes, if it's in a house, well, you can't access that money. So that's the critical thing, really, that this is quite a damning survey that we're seeing. And ultimately, I'm concerned that if we go down the route of trying to tax wealth, we're just going to push more and more people out of the UK abroad.
OK, Jamie Jenkins, we have to leave it there. Thank you for your time, as ever.